285 milligrams this time in the morning, 285. 295 in the morning, 285 and perfect and underwear, 62 pound of weight mill. 285, 290, 290.
It's places like Gisborne Auction Market where you can find the men of Bashaw Leaves out in force, since the raising, buying and selling of cattle is how most of them earn their living. Not that they are any more likely to talk there. Back in the 20s and 30s, James Dawson was a familiar figure at market, and some of the older farmers knew him pretty well. And he's remembered as a man with very little to say, even by Bashaw Leaf standards.
I think it's important when you're looking at this murder to consider what happened at the different stages, to look very carefully at what the murdered man said about the evening. He said that he'd gone to the Edisford Bridge Inn and he'd had a few drinks and he'd left just after 9 o'clock. There's no doubt about that he left at that time. The licensee gave evidence to that effect. Tommy Kenyon talks about seeing him in the lane by the lights of his head of the car, and indeed also another witness gave evidence at the inquest to say that he'd seen him in the lights of a vehicle as well. So there's no doubt about that. Two good witnesses put him in the lane at that time. The point is, though, what happened between the time that he was seen in the lane and the time that Tommy Kenyon saw him when he came home. Now, Tommy Kenyon tells us that when he got back to the hall, James Dawson was sitting in front of the fire. He'd obviously eaten his meal, and he was sitting. There was no one else up. Now, that contradicts the evidence that was given at the inquest.
His sister said that he'd come home at 9:20 p.m, had his supper, and then, 10 minutes later, went to bed. But Tommy Kenyon says he was still up well over an hour after that, and on his own. Did he get up again after the rest of the family had gone to bed? If so, perhaps he was shot at another time, maybe in the small hours and in another place, that he left the farm again that night.
Now, you've really got to look now, I think, to the following morning. Tommy Kenyon gets up in the morning. He goes outside and he milks the cows, along with Albert Pickles, who is Jim Dawson's nephew. When they come in, Tommy Kenyon sees one of the sisters. He's not sure which, but he sees one of them mopping round the hearth where there was blood. There was blood also in the chair, and Tommy Kenyon also says that there was some blood on the staircase. The doctor is sent for. The doctor arrives, and it's only at that stage, according to the inquest evidence, that Jim Dawson allowed the police to be sent for. But before the police arrived, he's taken off to the doctor in Clitheroe, where he has the wound x-rayed, and it's described at the inquest as a small bird's egg. The bullet is described in that way. He refuses to have it removed, and in fact returns home.
Now, why should he do that? Was he anxious to cover up the real facts, maybe protecting somebody, or making sure there was no evidence around for the police to find when they arrived?
The following morning, this is now the Tuesday morning, he goes to Blackburn to have the bullet removed, and on Thursday morning, just a few hours in fact before he died, he made another statement to the magistrate's clerk's assistant at Blackburn, a chap called Mr. George Leach. And it was a very short statement and very much to the point. And I have it here. It says, "I declare that I do not know who fired the shot. There is nothing else I can tell you that I know of." So Jim Dawson was definitely going to say nothing. Either he knew nothing or he was going to say nothing.
And then there's the question of the motive, which is something else the police failed to work out. Who stood to gain from the death of James Dawson, if gain was the motive? Wolf Blacker had a theory that perhaps the family knew more about it than they said.
I don't think that for a minute. I don't think it for a minute. His family had to do with it. He might think so, but I don't. Not for a minute, I don't.
Now, I know that Wilf Blacker did have his doubts about Albert Pickles. Now, he was the dead man's nephew.
Nephew. I don't think it was him.
But, of course, Albert Pickles had the most to gain, didn't he?
Well, I don't know. They were...
In material terms.
Well, they were Polly and Annie living and Lily. And Harry, like, he were only a nephew, weren't it? There were 3 sisters and another brother left.
But local people round here say that Albert Pickles changed a lot after the murder.
I went drinking. That's what you mean.
Well, what did happen to him afterwards?
He died soon after. He died soon after.
Now, the neighbouring farm to the Dawsons was run by the Simpson family. And when the police searched their land, they found something very strange.
There's the curious tale, finally, of the dog. I found it in a small paragraph in the local Clitheroe newspaper, and it's the story of the police finding a dog, again strangely on Tommy Simpson's land. The dog had been shot. The bullet hadn't gone, or certainly the wound didn't go right through the dog. It stopped. But when the police had the dog x-rayed, they found no bullet in the dog. Now, it's almost Sherlock Holmes, that, the curious case of the dog. But I wonder whether or not the murderer, whoever he, or perhaps she was, had target practice with the bullet and had practiced on the dog.
The Simpson family, of course, knew the Dawsons pretty well. They were widely respected and liked in Bashaw Leaves. The father, Tommy, was a leading figure at the local church. The Simpsons had 3 children, 2 daughters and a son. One girl was called Nancy. Who was the girl around here that you remember best?
Well, Nancy, I think, because I lived next door to her, and then she used to come down at summer. And it red hot day and night, well, we used to jump for that. It's not a swimming pool, it's down deep pool. I'll show you, come in tomorrow, I'll show you. I used to wash sheep in it. That time sheep, when you washed wool, it was worth a penny a pound more than their unwashed wool, you know.
So tell me again, what did you used to do there?
We used to go playing about at this deep pool.
Swimming?
Swimming, acting the bloody goat, you know how you do when you're young.
How old was Nancy then?
Oh, there's 17, 18, nothing.
And what was she like?
You're a fit lass. She were that.
Nancy left Bashaw Leaves a long time ago, 40 years and more. No one in the village had any idea where she lived, and as far as anyone knew, she never came back to visit friends or relatives. She was eventually found in Salford. A widow now, she lives on her own in a council flat. Now, when you were a young girl, Nancy, you got into a bit of trouble, didn't you?
Yes, I went and got myself in trouble. That's when I had my own son, Jimmy.
How old were you?
17.
So you're 17, you're unmarried,
Yeah.
living in Bashaw Leaves.
Oh, and after that, my life was every day I wished I was leaving home. Yeah.
When did you tell your mother you were pregnant?
Oh, I nearly had the baby before she knew I was pregnant. She took me to the doctor. The doctor didn't even know.
What did she say? You see, they say all sorts of things now in Bashaw Leaves, those who try to put 2 and 2 together. They even say that perhaps James Dawson was the father of the child.
No. Nothing to do with me. No, I never know go with him. He's a lot older than me anyway, wasn't he?
Did he ever have any girlfriends? Did he go out with anybody?
He got in with this lady friend once. But he wasn't friendly with her for long. It was all that.
Who was she?
Somebody said she was no good, somebody from Salford. Supposed to be. I never got to know who it was. I know they said she was a married woman, but He didn't knock around with us that long. He only knocked around with about 5 or 6 weeks.
I suppose Tommy Simpson must have been pretty upset when Nancy got pregnant.
I dare say, well, he would be, but he never said no to me, but he always seemed to go again me, you know, like. He's waited to me a time or two coming up road, you know, for Eddisford Bridge.
Why?
I don't know, I think he had his knife into me. I had one day with him. He went wife all the way to be. That would have been 11 o'clock at night.
How long before the murder was that?
Or a bit before that. A bit before that, and I were coming up that old road as you took them photos on at dinner time, and just I'm coming past Barn at top. Rollers had a stick at that time, you know, going up that road. I thought anybody tackles me like I'll be first in with this stick, you know. And as I'm going past, they come out at stable, I think it were, and a shipman lamp, Tommy and wife. I mean, his wife says, "That's him, Tommy, get him." I thought, right, I'll bloody get thee first. So I let drive at him, and she grabbed the stick out of me, and the pair on us landed at floor, like. And that pair on us landed at floor, and we didn't hurt ourselves really, just a scare or something of that sort. And he never tackled me no more, but I could see every time I passed him or he passed me on the road, he always had a black look for him, or that style of thing.
Was he a violent man?
I don't think he were, but it was just something getting on his mind. I'm sure it was between me and Nancy. I'm sure it were.
Do you mean that he thought that you were the father of the child?
I think I do. But I weren't, as true as I'm said to this to you.
Who was the father?
After autumn, used to live down Mitten. Used to live with his mother in a little cottage down Mitten there. And
Tommy Kenyon is still convinced that her father thought it was him. But maybe there's another motive to consider here. Jealousy.
You remember Nancy saying that he had a liaison with a married woman, and who knows, perhaps it's an irate husband chasing him across the fields in the early hours of the morning. But at the same time, if it was an irate husband, would he go to the trouble of a homemade bullet?
Now there's something else to consider. After the murder, Tommy Simpson was found dead.
The youngest said it, Baron.
That sounds odd.
Oh, it does. I always thought there was something preyed on his mind.
Why do you think your father committed suicide?
well, he got in trouble with his milk, you know. And nobody could see with their own eye where the water was coming from. But when he come to Luke, there was water coming in, and they got a summons. And I think it just got on top of him altogether, you know.
The red pump in Bashaw Leaves stands in the very heart of the village. Tommy Kenyon was a regular there in his youth. That's where he went on the night of the murder, instead of meeting James Dawson. He's about to meet someone he hasn't seen for 40 years.
Oh, no. Hello, Tommy. How are you?
You have seen that face before.
I've seen your face before, Adele.
I haven't met you out yet. You're getting... It's not Nancy, is it?
It is.
And you have it. What do you have in the drink? Best drink it's out.
I'll have a rum and pep.
The rum and pep. Where's waiter? No, that last
Thank
round
you.
time's sake.
Thank you very much.
Them were days. Them were days.
He was too busy them days knocking them back.
Knocking them back.
Too busy on time to look at anybody them days. He was too busy.
Give up. It's time to play about, anyway, so...
We get a chance to do that so much.
We're all right.
Went down there on there and it was timed with clock.
Well, telling me and your father having a bloody scuffle at Bashertown.
I can't
Well, I'd had a
remember
drink or two and we started and finished up with no lark. I hit him and he hit me and then that were it. And it weren't long after for me and Jim going to Eddisford Brig.
that. Where was it when he was supposed to be shot? It was at bottom of
Aye.
lane, weren't it?
Ah, bottom of
What
lane.
they used to call back lane.
Ah, little Henry Blushy told me something I haven't told nobody else yet.
And he said, what?
He said to me, he says, Uncle Tommy's done a sec down to our house, like, and walling up with it.
Yeah.
And he said he thought police were looking for what were in that sack. I don't know, Rick, bloody certain out about it, like.
I don't know. Well, I can't see him going down to Cristiano's with that.
Well, they were getting out of way for a Berchets, weren't it, you know.
Auntie Cristiano.
What there is out
Auntie
of
Cristiano, they crowned him with it.
I don't know. They were funny to take
I wonder where
they were a bit queer to take a sack down there, like when police were out and about, weren't it?
I can't imagine that.
What's the story about the bag, Tommy?
It were Henry Blessed, tell me, worked for Tommy Simpson.
Who was Henry Blessed?
Tommy were his uncle, Tommy Simpson, and Henry's mother were brother and sister. They lived on Walling Ab. And he took this bag down there out at road.
So this bag was taken down after the murder?
Ah,
And what was in the bag?
I didn't ask him. I had an idea, like to tell me, really, wasn't it? Like it. I weren't going to dig into it because you know what I mean. It didn't outdo me, had it? What were it, bag?
What do you think was in the bag?
But gun and part of pokers were left.
And did you tell the police this?
No.
And you didn't tell the police either about the assault when Tommy Simpson assaulted you because he thought you were going out with Nancy?
No, I didn't tell him that.
But why didn't you tell them about the bag?
Well, they never asked me about that.
Perhaps that held the clue or the key to the whole thing. And if Wilf Blacker had have known that, and Wilf Blacker was a very clever detective, there was no doubt about that, that might have provided him with the lead that he wanted. I think James Dawson knew who it was who wanted to murder him. I think he was protecting that person. I think that James Dawson didn't think he was going to die, and in fact didn't die for 3 days. And then, only through his own incompetence at getting medical help quickly, he died, as you remember, of septicemia. I think that could have been averted. I think he knew who the murderer was. I think he was going to sort it all out in his own good time later. But the events overtook him, and he died. In other words, he was acting in the typical Bashaw Leaves manner. He was keeping it quiet, he was keeping it close to the chest, he was going to say nothing. Just like the area.
Tommy, have you got any other theories about the murder?
No, all I can think is it were intended for me, that's all.
Intended for you?
Well, I think so.
Now, why should you think that you were the man who was meant to be murdered that night?
For a simple reason, when we having a do with him, and then playing about with his daughter, I fancy thought, well, he'll not play about with her no more, like, I'll not bugger into it. And Jim and him, they were as thick as thieves. Well, not as thick as thieves, but they'd talk and, you know, go into Thoxham or buying a car or something of that sort. And me and Tommy, well, we weren't all that bad, but we were enemies, you know what I mean. And I couldn't see him shooting Jim Dawson. I couldn't.
Tommy, it seems to me that you think that you know who did it.
Oh, I do.
But he meant the bullet for you.
For me. I'll stout it for its start, and I do. I'll still do as long as I live. I do.
In the end, it's Bashaw Leaves that wins. This very insular community, they keep their own counsel. They don't say much to anyone. They certainly didn't say much to Wilf Blacker. They didn't say much to anybody at all. They haven't said really very much today. There were certainly no winners. Wilf Blacker didn't succeed in solving the case. James Dawson is dead. And the only person, or the only thing to have won, really is the village itself.